Hi, thank you for tuning in to another edition of Travel with Sean. I'm Sean, and I'm standing in front of the York Minster. Minster being an Old English word for missionary church, missionary cathedral. Long, long ago, this is where the monks, the priests would have their headquarters, their home base, as they travel out into the wilderness, to the pagan world, if you will, and try to convert people to Christianity. As you can see, the interior of York Minster is huge. It's one of the largest cathedrals in England. Lots and lots of stained glass windows. Lots of carvings. It was built on the foundations of the minster, built in 1080. And here you can see the grand organ. There's been an organ in the minster as early as the 1100s, and they document it being replaced many times throughout the centuries. Here you can see what's called the Five Sisters window, which was made in the 1250s, dedicated to the women who were instrumental in the minster over the years. This is called the King's Screen, which was finished in 1450, and these are the kings, all the kings of England up until then. For me, yes. Again, you can see the grand organ. Now we're entering the part of the church called the choir. As you can guess, this is where the choir sits. This window back here is called the East Window. It's the largest stained glass window in Europe, possibly the largest in the world. The chapter house was built in 1285 to 1286, which was a workroom, office space for the dean of the minster, and was physically located outside of the minster as a separate building. In 1291, during the reign of King Edward I, this actually was the meeting place for Parliament. And that's what we're looking at here, is the base of the 11th century minster. This is the tomb of Saint William, who's the patron saint of York. He was Archbishop of York twice. He died in the year 1080. And from here you can see the chapel for St. William.
The Far East End were actually expanding that and
You can see they're doing a lot of repair restoration on this end of the church. Minster. I get used to that word. And I'm standing in front of the St. Michael the Belfry Church. This church was built in the 1500s. It's the only church built prior to the Protestant Reformation in England that was built all at one time. And its big claim to fame, more than that, Guy Fawkes. Now, if you're not from Great Britain and you haven't studied history, you probably don't know who Guy Fawkes was. He was a very famous character during the Reformation, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. He was the principal character involved in the plot to blow up the Parliament and assassinate Queen Elizabeth I. And to commemorate the day that was the attempted plot, they now call Guy Fawkes Day. Right here, behind us, behind me, in front of you, is St. Michael the Belfry church home to Guy Fawkes and his family. His parents are actually buried there. You'll notice it's right next to the York Minster, which is where it gets its name. The church was dedicated to St. Michael, and a belfry is the church's bell tower. That's the belfry. So this is St. Michael's Church located next to the belfry. Okay, now we are heading down a part of York called Shambles. So we're going to be in the Shambles. This is a very old section of the city, and you see the houses, the buildings are very close to each other, and the street is very narrow. This used to be the meat market and the butcher's part of the city. They had open meat market here in the medieval era, but the word shambles comes from the old butcher shops. The area where they would hang their meat for viewing is called Shambles. So from there they ended up calling it Shambles. But you can get an idea how narrow this street is. Then you have a small sidewalk on both sides, but then sometimes these buildings are so narrow. This is an ancient part of the city, and some of these buildings date back to the 1400s. Like this one here, typical style of the 1500s, early 1500s. These are some of the oldest existing buildings in the city, other than, of course, the Minster. So this part of the city has remained the most original of any. Now we come to the end of the Shambles. Ahead of us are two old buildings. The Golden Fleece is among the oldest pubs in York, and you can tell the building right next to it is from the 15th or 16th century. This is the Bootham Bar here at the York city walls. The gates were called bars. So the Bootham Bar was a Bootham city gate. And this one is called the Bootham because in here, inside these walls, this is where they had their city market. And each stall for the market was called a booth. So Bootham Bar. When you're walking the city wall, you can walk from Bootham Bar, which was the city gate by the market booth. Then you come to Monk's Bar, which is the tallest of each of the city gates and the York city walls. When walking on the city walls, you can get a good look of the city of York. Here's a pub restaurant called the Fat Badger. You can see the York Minster which is the cathedral. This was a fortified walkway. So they had many different openings for soldiers. Here you can see the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey, which was started in the 12th century, and during the reign of Henry VIII in the 1560s, I believe it was, all the monasteries, abbeys, and convents were closed. And during the English Civil War, a lot of them were blown up, any that still remained standing, but some were taken apart and used for other churches. Thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe down below to be alerted to future episodes of Travel with Sean.